So that was my first experience with politics, and you know, we had our ups and downs. I remember knocking on doors on John Street over here, which is the older section of town right next to Victoria Park. My dad was a school principal for 35 years. And if you notice those homes, most of them have 5 steps leading up to a long veranda, then you're at the door. So I did that about 6 times in a row, up the steps, over the veranda. Then the next house, I said, hi, I'm John Betts, I'm Ryan, I appreciate your support. Turned around and landed flat on my face. There was no veranda there, it was just steps. And I went down every one of them, landed flat on my face. And my other good experience, which put a damper on my first impression of running in politics, was I was ready to knock on doors in the Hildegarde subdivision. And I had my suit on, it was a Saturday morning, a big friendly dog came and jumped up on me. And you know what friendly, excited dogs do. So I was completely wet. I went to the car and drive home to change. I locked my keys in the car. So that was my first impression. I said, I almost said, God, what have you got me into? You know, I didn't choose this, but sometimes you just find yourself in a situation that you had no aspiration for whatsoever, no interest. We never talked about politics at home. But that was one of my first experiences with that. I want to mention too, before I go on to some of the other things to say, that one verse that has sustained me over the years is in Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and a strong mind. And that verse has helped me over and over. I share that with our leader, Premier David Albert, Joey Carr and others at caucus. And you know, it's almost like we've gone back to the future. Last week, my colleagues elected me as the chair of the caucus again, which is what I was back in '99. I didn't aspire to be that, but so we'll probably be talking about some of the presentations later on. Life is not fair. Things that happen in life are not always fair. And yet we must not give up. The only thing we can control is our attitude. And when you look at some of the things that are happening, and I've read a lot of your literature about what has happened over the years with pro-life and things that are happening in our province. I know we as in the governments I've been in, we've never supported the Moncton Clinic and everything. Just recently, during the election, I found out that the casino had sent me a donation. When I found out about it, I sent the check back because so many of our people, Moncton is doing very well, and if they're going to be making $50 million a year, where's it coming from? 50% of the profits of casinos comes from 2 or 3% of the people that go in there. And people lose their families, they lose their home, and not everyone is disciplined, and those are the people that I see in my office that can't pay their power bills and they don't know where to turn, so I didn't support that. I mentioned earlier about the lack of infants to adopt in this province, and the fact that there are 1,000 abortions a year. It's an equation that's horrendous. I want to mention also that our leader, Premier David Albert, and other MLAs have stood on the steps of the legislature in support of pro-life. His dad, David's dad is a Baptist pastor, and he was interviewed by Steve Murphy just a short while ago. Someone brought this to my attention. And Steve Murphy somehow got to the verse in the Bible that said that Christ might have preeminence in your life. He asked that to David, and he said, is that true with you? And he said, yes, it is. And a lot of times we don't hear about these things. In Canadian politics, it's not cool to say that you're a Christian. They try to separate it, but when your life is a Christian, it's part of everything you are. It's part of your work, it's part of what you do. And that is the difficulty that is happening in our school system, as George mentioned earlier. Educators sometimes are saying it's happening, let's give them a condom, or let's do this or that to prevent the unwanted pregnancies, etc. But I say the the first step is the only safe way to prevent pregnancy before marriage is abstinence. Abstinence is the only way. You don't need medical doctors to tell us that, although they have. It's certainly the only way. It's the only safe way. And according to many of our beliefs and our family values, that's just the way we bring up our children. And my daughter has been an inspiration to me, the fact that she would spend so much of her time volunteering. She lives in Yarmouth now and does the same thing there. She speaks about her experiences that she had at the pregnancy center. She encourages young girls in their life. Her husband went to Yarmouth as a youth pastor in a Wesleyan church. When he arrived, there were 19 young people in the church. A year later, there were 149. They were reaching out. Young kids, they want a good example in their life. And we do have some good examples out there, and we must not give up in our youth. I was asked by former Premier Bernard Lord to review some of the materials that were being put out to the phys ed department. He was the learning specialist. And we looked at some of it, and it did not reflect our values whatsoever. And I mentioned about abstinence, and they would say, oh, it's in there. It's in there. I said, well, it's the only way. It's the only way. So I heard about some of the things going on here. It's not just in there. It's the only way, and it's the right way. So I was very disappointed with their reaction. And I worked very closely here at the several private schools, including the Moncton Wesleyan Learning Academy, Cranbrook University, which used to be the Baptist University here, helping them in their growth. And they do have standards out there, and their students are thriving. In fact, 85% of the graduates of the education program at ABU Crandall are hired here in the district. That's 85% of them, because they're given not only the knowledge, but also the spiritual, three aspects of the life: spiritual, emotional, and intellectual, and they do not neglect the spiritual. And we're criticized for that. Many people say you're getting public funding, therefore you should water down your curriculum. They have refused to do that. So I've had quite a bit of experience working with them, and I appreciate their input, and also the fact that if you have a choice, you should have a choice in education. And if you do, you should deduct the tax. You're paying an education tax right now, and if you choose to bring up your own children in education at homeschooling, or if you send your children to a private school or a church school, then you're paying for it twice. And that's a consideration that I definitely like our government to look into, and I will be bringing up that topic with them again. I just want to refer a little bit to some of the information that I've actually been reading on, and it talks about some of the court rulings in the past and how little we as Canadians know about abortion regulations, and that 50% of Canadians think that there should be some sort of regulations implemented, and other areas too. So I wouldn't get into all that because you're more knowledgeable than I am, but I just wanted to share with you some of the things that we have been encountering, and some of the arguments that people have given us. They say, well, parents aren't educating their children about sex education, and many times the churches aren't doing it. Therefore, that's the argument we've all heard, therefore in education, the educational system, we should be doing it. But I think what has happened in the past, and from what I'm hearing in the Miramichi, it's a defeatist attitude. They're going to do it anyway, so let's give them a constant. Breaks down to that, basically. They have given up on our children. So I say let's give them good models, good role models, particularly those of you who are Christians, that we have a life of freedom from anything that will drag us down, and that we are saved to a life of freedom, and that God wants nothing in our lives that harm us and will not withhold any good thing from Thanks.